to another episode of Sage Cigarettes Presents A Ghost in the Magazine. I'm Steph.
And I'm Gabe.
And this week's movie is Blacula. So before we start talking about Blacula, I just want to give a little background in the type of movie that Blacula is and why it's so important to our list for Black History Month. So there is a subgenre of film from back when Hollywood was segregated called blaxploitation films, and that term was coined by Junius Griffin from the NAACP. And I mean, it sounds bad, but it was a way to get people of color out of standard roles like bus porter or drug dealer. And that stuff still happens today, but they were trying to make a way for themselves. And so some people were about it. They're like, yes, this is what we need. This is going to make waves for people of color. And then other people felt like it perpetuated stereotypes in the Black community, which I guess I can see where they come from. But Blacula and its sequel, Scream Blacula Scream, are among like the most well-known blaxploitation films. Yeah, so I think that that's pretty neat. It was meant specifically for an urban Black audience, but they became really popular for other races as well. I think a modern example of like mocking this kind of style is Austin Powers Goldmember. Have you ever seen that movie?
Yeah, but I don't remember it too much.
Well, with Beyonce, and she played Foxy Cleopatra, and she's a whole lot of woman. My sister dressed up as her for Halloween. It's the only reason why I remember like exactly what she says, and she says it with the head bob and everything. So I think it's nice because these films are well known for having a jazzy soundtrack or funky one like soul music, and this movie definitely had that. It was very, I mean, the only way I can describe it is funky.
Makes you want to dance.
It definitely did that, but like only if you have a big afro. You kind of need that. So, okay. So now we can talk about Blacula. And the themes of blaxploitation movies kind of melt into this movie. Starting with the funky music. It had a wonderful intro with the music, and it was animated, and there was a little bat. It was really fun. It was cute.
It was a really cool title sequence, but it was long too.
It was very long. But the groovy ass music helped. Okay, so in this movie in the beginning, you see Dracula in his castle. And Blacula is actually Prince Mamuwalde, and him and his wife Luva are visiting Dracula. For all reasons, they're trying to get him to give up the slave trade. And we covered 3 versions of like the classic Dracula or the classic vampire. And you don't really consider his moral or political views when you're watching Dracula, but this one just kind of punches you in the face. And he won't do it. He's like, nope, I like having slaves.
Yeah, and he was being very insulting too. Didn't he say that there were animals?
Yeah, he said something like that, and then he was getting fresh with Luva, and he's like, it's a compliment for me to look at your brown wife in that way, so like, fucking take it. And you're like, Dracula? What the fuck?
Mamuwalde is very like classy about it. He's like, no, you're ignorant.
Right. Mamuwalde, he's a classy dude. He's a prince, and I feel like through the whole movie, he kind of keeps this weird grace. He's kind of like a force of calm, even when he's eating people or whatever. So Dracula says, fuck you. And he says, I'm going to curse you with the kiss of the undead. He didn't say it like that, but that's what was happening. And he locked fucking Luva in there with him, like, you're gonna starve to death.
They have this fighting sequence.
Yeah, it is bad.
Yeah, and they eventually give him the bite and lock him away. I don't know if he closed the casket at that point, but he was talking and whatever, and he's like telling him like, you're gonna be hungry in there for blood, and then he's like, I'm gonna call you Blacula. And I'm like, oh yeah, you're so clever, cool.
Yeah, it was really weak, and he was very dramatic about it. At one point, I think he said, you shall pay, Black Prince. Shut the fuck up. So I think the intro actually starts after that. And then you're in the modern times, the 70s to be specific. And there is a gay couple who are, trying to purchase Dracula's house for a steal. And, they inherit Mama Walde in this thing. I want to know how come he wasn't discovered sooner and the coffin opened, because at some point Luva's bones had to be found because they didn't find them then.
The guy that was there selling it to them, he did say that it had been abandoned for a while and like they didn't mess with it and they eventually restored it. I don't know how much time had passed, but it had to have gone through it.
Bones had to have been found at some point, if not before, when those guys who bought the house were going through. Like, they absolutely should have found her remains before Blacula rose from the dead and ate them.
Yeah, unless she got out somehow. I doubt it, but I'm just saying.
Okay, so they're doing their thing, checking out the house, and Blacula gets risen. So obviously he bites them. And at some point, there's like doctors and coroners involved, and there's a funeral. Someone says it's a rat bite that killed them.
Yes, yeah.
And I'm like, in what universe is that a rat bite?
But very quickly, the doctor, Gordon Thomas, the funeral for Bobby.
That was one half of the gay couple.
Yeah, he pointed out, like, there's no blood in his veins. He's showing, like, the funeral director, look, there's no blood in his veins. Isn't that weird? So they pointed it out very quickly, but everyone else is like, rats must be, yeah, 2 small bites on the neck, it must be rats.
Yeah, everyone's sipping on the dumb bitch juice, and they're very in denial. In that way, like with The Evil Within, when the brother was like, this is sketchy, but lets it easily be explained away, like, no, I'm not going to look deeply into it. So there's a lot of that floating around here. But the doctor is with the shits. And when Blacula rose, you would expect him to be like desiccated. He's gone centuries without feeding. He should be like sunken in like a Lestat after he was, attacked by Claudia and thrown into the water. Like, he has no blood. He has not feasted. And also, I had a question. I have seen a lot of vampire movies. I've read a lot of vampire books, and I'm wondering how Mama Walde could be like, he could just wake up knowing what the fuck to do and how to be like a stone cold killer. He didn't have any training.
Well, when he first woke up, it's because the guy took the lock off of the coffin, but then the other guy cut himself. So he smelled the blood. So at that point, it was probably instinct.
Sure, bloodlust.
Yeah.
But then, like, what we were talking about, he has this just elegance around him. Like, how can he just pick that up so quickly after losing his life, waking up centuries later? I would be confused.
They probably didn't really think too deep about this movie. I mean, it came out in the 70s, so like.
What, you think that movies from the 70s don't have flavor?
I mean, and I don't know, but I feel like people back then when this came out, they weren't really like picking it apart for things like that.
Or such just me. Old 2021 asked me. I think about these things. And I wasn't even smoking. So in comes the trope that I've mentioned before that I'm not super fond of. The reincarnated love shit. At the funeral for Bobby, one of the relatives, her name is Tina, spit an image of his dead wife, Luva. And now that's his mission, getting her to like be with him forever.
First, he thinks it just is her. He's like,
well, sure. But then, she sets the shit straight.
I love when she eventually gets away and he gets hit by the cab.
He got run over.
Well, yeah, but like it was so graceful. Like the way he got hit.
Oh, I fell over. So he's chasing Tina through the fucking streets. Like, oh, you're my wife. And she's like, get away from me, crazy man. I think he gets her purse at one point. She drops her purse like crazy Butterfingers. And so then she's scared, like, oh, he's going to find out where I live because stuff's in my purse or whatever. So that's the energy, right? That's the energy. This man just chased me through the streets. He has my purse. He knows where I live. I'm scared. And then it flips. So it was very Fright Night in my mind because, so in Fright Night, he's got the reincarnated love. That's why he's obsessed with Amy. And then he's chasing them and he ends up at a club where he dazzles her. That's kind of what happens here. He shows up at the club where they're all at, the doctor's wife, which the doctor and his wife are very precious. Like, he blows kisses at her. He loves her. He loves her so much. I think it's really sweet. And his wife is Tina's sister. So all of a sudden he shows up and he's like, I have your purse. And she's like, my hero, not You were just chasing me through the fucking
Yeah,
streets,
like,
bro.
he's the reason why you lost it in the first place.
That's what I'm saying. I'm like, what happened? What happened here? And from that point on, she's just about him. And then he gives her purse and he's like, hi, you look a lot like my dead wife.
Yeah, he's very to the point.
He's
He's
very
not
blunt. And she's
just so
like,
you know.
oh, that's cute as fuck. I'd be like, wow, you gotta go. I have to go. One of us needs to leave.
Yeah, she was, like, flattered by it.
It's weird to me. It all feels very rushed and crazy pants. I do love in the club scene that it's just like a really long musical number because there's a live music performance happening and they're into it and their outfits are on point and they spend a lot of time with the camera on these musicians. So then there's someone there. There's a weird guy who's friends with the doctor and he keeps making comments like, that sure is a weird guy.
I think his name was Skillet.
Skillet. Yeah, that sounds right. He's like, oh, that's a weird guy. And then there's someone with a camera, a woman with a camera, and she's taking pictures. She takes a picture really close, and that flash just sets Mama Walde off. Why are you scaring the camera, bro?
But how did he know that he wasn't gonna show up on the camera?
Ah, I see what you're doing.
Yeah.
He had to know.
Yeah,
This is
he
valid.
had to have
He
known,
had
yeah.
to know because then the lady directly takes a picture of him with Tina and he hunts her down at her apartment and he turns her because he knew he wasn't going to show up. And sure enough, she's developing. Here's another thing that bothers me. She was working at a club late. She goes straight home afterwards to develop her pictures. Not me. Like, I got a veg. Y'all can get your pictures tomorrow. So either she's really punctual or after that, Tina's just very drawn to him. And they're like really dramatic.
I think she tells him, can you please come back to the club next time?
Yeah. And
Yeah.
I'm like, girlfriend. Okay, let's talk about the makeup for a second. When he vamps out, like, okay. So I love vampire transformations. My favorites are the ones where their faces get really gnarly, like Lost Boys and Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I love that shit. His transformation is a lot of Party City makeup and his sideburns and his facial hair grow
Yeah, it's
outwards.
kind of like, it's not even like he's growing a beard because his chin and the lower half of his cheeks don't have any hair. It's like the hair starts from his sideburns and then it goes out like from the top of his cheeks towards his nose.
And it's
Like,
extra fluffy.
yeah, and his eyebrows too. It's just a lot poofier and thicker. And it's
It's like he hasn't gotten a haircut in centuries. But when he's not in action, it goes down. But he's always very sweaty throughout the movie. He's very sweaty, which I'm used to Anne Rice vampires and they sweat blood.
his transformation's interesting.
What I did like though in that scene where he turns the photographer lady, when she whips back the curtain from her darkroom or whatever, he literally floats towards her and he's like, ah.
Yeah. That was hilarious.
It's so good. It's gold. I love that. I lived for that. There's a scene with the cab driver because he also turns the cab driver. He's just
Right,
got like
after
a
she
little
hits him.
army. So there's a scene, I don't know, I can't remember exactly what was happening, but when she like bursts out of a door and her hair is crazy.
It's towards the middle and the end.
Anyways,
Okay.
it reminded me of those things in Lovecraft Country. The cursed girls with the hair.
Oh, yes.
They're derogatory images mocking Black people, like caricatures from segregation era. And I just don't know how to properly describe it. Like with the exaggerated features, like the lips and the eyes being big and the hair being
Crazy and like
nappy.
It's pretty much what blackface looked like back then.
Yeah, so I think it was very like a pointed thing. Like I think it was done purposefully. If you were to look up racist caricatures right now, you would see a lot of similar images. And like people thought this was funny. So it kind of makes sense that it would go with black exploitation.
So meanwhile, while all this is happening, Gordon Thomas, the doctor, he's noticing the similarities. The no blood in the veins. He knows that something isn't right. He's like, these people are dying in the same fashion and their bodies look the same. He's trying to work with the police, and they're kind of dropping the ball. The cop he's talking to, he's a white guy. He is very quick to kind of just, it's probably the Black Panthers. You sure it's not them?
Yes, and
Yeah.
he also, I don't know if it was that cop, but the cops in general are a disgrace because they were looking for someone and someone really popped off and was like, "Oh, how can you tell? Because they all look the same."
Gordon Thomas is like, nah, that's not right. That's like the side story. You got the story with Blacula, with Tina, and they have this weird romance thing. And then you got Dr. Thomas investigating,
And his
looking in.
wife just like looking pretty.
I know at some point he goes to Tina's house and they sleep together.
It's weird. It's mad weird. The timeline is weird for me because I just have all of these like roundabout thoughts about it. Like the scene where I'm pretty sure they're killing the cab driver.
They go to dig up the body. He's talking to his wife. He's like, "Oh, we need to go dig up the body," and like,
Yeah, and
I
he
need to see something."
lies.
They dig up the white guy, but he can't prepare. Like he had a stake and everything. Like at some point, he figured out like, "Yeah, it's probably vampires," and they killed him. But his wife is like screaming, like, "Oh my god, why'd you kill him?"
I wouldn't be that kind of wife, okay? I would be real quick to say, this is probably a vampire. The body disappeared from the morgue. Vampires.
So at that point, his suspicions are confirmed. So when he realizes this, he's like, "Oh crap, the cab driver, I think her name was
Oh,
Juanita.
yeah.
She's still at the morgue." So he calls the coroner. "Hey, take her out of the deep freeze, but like lock the door." And he's starting to do it, but then the phone rings, so he doesn't lock the door. So this whole time she's warming up or melting. I don't know, but she's sweating a lot.
She's defrosting.
And he's on the phone with him, and he's like, "Be careful, whatever." Anyway, and then that's when she kills him. She runs at him. She looks so crazy.
She looked very scary, but that's what I'm talking about with the wild hair. She looked just like one of those things. And that whole sequence in Lovecraft Country, which I've said it already. If you haven't seen Lovecraft Country, watch it. It is powerful. And we love a good Lovecraft adaptation. So that whole sequence with these caricature girls, they're basically a curse going after this little girl in the show, is terrifying. So this is also scary. I love the imagery, and then I love when they come at her cross.
The doctor and his wife show up. The guy's
Yeah.
already dead. It's all messy, but he came with a cross. Like he came prepared.
He came ready, and the way she like backed down from it, it's one of my favorite things that happen in vampire movies. And I know I mentioned Fright Night a lot. Like when they tried to go after Jerry with the cross, he's like, "Oh, you have to have faith." But because evil was a new vampire, that should just worked, and it hurt him. And I'm not sure what it is about that aspect of it, but I love that. And she did all the right vampire-y things.
He knew what he was dealing with, and he was like the only competent person in the movie.
Also, that man's name is Big Skillet. I did write it down somewhere.
Big Skillet, okay.
Yeah.
I'm not sure that he's figured out it's him, but he knows it's
But
a
he knows that
vampire.
he's a very strange man.
Yeah. Back at the club, and Mama Walde's there with them, and the doctor, he's kind of giving him squinty eyes, talking about supernatural creatures. And I thought this was kind of dumb, but Blacula was kind of making himself look a little suspicious.
Yeah. I think he really started not to give a fuck because at one point he turned into a bat in front of a lot of people. He did not.
Yeah.
He's like, "Fuck y'all, I'm just here for my woman."
So when the waitress goes up and she's like, "What do you want to drink?" He's like, "I'll take a Bloody Mary." Like,
Okay,
roll my
Mama
eyes, like,
Walde.
yeah,
Okay.
like, okay, whatever. Then at some point they're looking for Bobby or Billy. That's what their names were, Bobby and Billy. They're looking for him because he's the one that disappeared from the funeral home, and some cops spot him walking in the street with another guy. And I wrote down, "Fuck those cops," because they made a comment.
It was probably terrible and racist.
It was a terrible
very
comment.
on brand.
So they spot them, and now they're following them, and they call the doctor or whatever. So then they head over there, right? And it's like an ambush because now there's a bunch of vampires in this warehouse, and it's like this whole crazy fight scene. And
yeah, okay. I'm sorry. Let me pause you right there. The fight scenes are all incredibly soft. There's no power behind the punches and things like that. It makes the sound, but it's very soft.
And all the vampires are doing, they're just jumping, they're pouncing, and like not even landing on the people. They're like hitting the ground. or like
It's
falling on top of a
awesome.
bunch of stuff. What are you doing? Aim.
They don't know how to aim. They're fresh vampires, so I guess it works
Yeah.
sometimes.
And they're trying to shoot, and obviously the bullets are doing nothing. And then one of them grabs like a lamp, throws it at one of the vampires, and just ignites. So
Yeah, I was very confused.
yeah, I don't know. The way I imagined it was like the vampire must have been doused in kerosene already for how quickly he ignited.
Oh, you know what? Sometimes in vampire lore, vampires are very, very flammable.
Maybe that was it.
There's the fight scene, and I mean, let's just get to Tina dying because that's a thing that happens. She was very Frankenstein's bride with the white streaks in her hair, which I'm not sure where those came from. Stress?
At some point they figured out it's him, and they're telling
Mm.
her like, "Oh, he's a murderer."
She's
But
like, I don't care.
how could he? No, no, no. That's not. It's
He
not
could
him.
never.
She's known this guy for like a week, maybe even less than that.
Like 5 minutes. It's been like an hour at the most, I feel like.
But then they're like, okay, we got to keep Tina away from this guy.
Have you ever tried to keep a woman away from a bad boy that she loves?
They have a curfew and they're trying to get everyone off the streets. Not really working because there's people everywhere and they're freaking out. She somehow gets out. She manages to escape her apartment and she starts walking to where Mama Walde is. But she kind of looks like she's possessed or like in a trance. And some cops spot her. They follow her. They all meet up at this place, and Mama Walde's like fighting all these cops, right? And he's throwing them over the rails and throwing barrels at them, which I thought was funny. And yeah, at some point he does transform into a bat. It's so funny because it's just like if you blink, you miss it. That's how quick he becomes a bat. So then eventually they're trying to get away, Mama Walde and Tina. And one of the cops sees them and he aims his gun at them, which he knows doesn't work. But then he closes his eyes to shoot. What are you doing? What happens next? One of the bullets ends up hitting Tina. Mama Walde freaks out and kills this guy. And then Tina's dying. And I think she says like, save me. Mama Walde's looking at her. He knows that he can save her by turning her, but like he doesn't want to. It was like a curse. But he eventually does. Whatever. I guess he puts her in the coffin because she's in the coffin.
Yes. Now I remember.
Yeah, so
well,
she's
she
in the
probably
coffin.
needed to rest.
Right, but I mean, they're trying to get away. Like the cops are showing up.
It was really close to daytime. And
True.
she's young. She's a fledgling vampire. She would have burnt to a crisp.
So Dr. Thomas and the main cop, that guy, they show up, they see the coffin, and they're getting ready to open it, but the one cop has a stake ready, and they open it, and it's Tina, and she's like, rah! Like,
Poor Tina. Rip.
Without hesitation, just wham, right in the chest.
Which is that's how you're supposed to do. But 9 times out of 10 in a scary movie, they hesitate. So of course, the one time without hesitation, it's the wrong vamp.
And then, like you said, she had that weird Bride of Frankenstein streak in her hair. So it showed her like what she would look like as a vampire for a minute. But after she's dead, she's like human again. And obviously, Mama Walde's freaking out.
Yeah, he has the rage.
So he's all depressed, and he's just like saying all these things.
Yes,
and,
he's being very dramatic.
But then he's like, "You don't even have to fight. I'm just gonna kill myself." So he's just walking up the steps. The sun is out, and he walks out. He's classic vampire, hissing, and he's in pain because the sun.
Yeah, but that whole scene is fucking wild because they're showing alternating between images of him walking into the sun, and it looks really stupid. Like it looks like they taped a transparency of the sun to a whiteboard, which who knows, maybe they did, and then they zoom back and forth to him until he becomes like a smoking pile of paper mache and maggots.
Where the hell did the maggots come from? I don't know.
I have no. I think it was just for effect. Accelerated rotting maggot.
Right. So he's dead, and I mean that's it. Roll credits.
End.
Overall, I don't think it's a bad movie. It's very interesting and it's funny. Great music, some really good lines too. The writing was pretty good, like a big skillet.
He literally only appeared to sit at the club table and talk about how weird Mama Walde was. That's a weird fucking guy.
Yeah, that was his thing.
And he would smile really big so you could see all his teeth. I liked it. You know, for all the bad makeup and things like that, I liked the movie. I thought it was funny. I liked the soundtrack. I loved the animation at the beginning. I am mad at myself for not having seen this movie sooner. I'm mad at myself for skipping it a lot, especially knowing what a staple piece of black cinema this is. Like, shame on me. Shame on y'all if you didn't watch it. Watch it. I didn't watch the sequel though, and I probably won't. I want to leave this right here. But if you do happen to watch the sequel, let us know what you thought. Let us know if it's worth a watch.
I've just got 2 facts I dug up on the internet. The first one is that there's a book called Anno Dracula. He's mentioned in there as a notable non-Caucasian vampire. So,
Accurate.
and then the other one is that when the movie came out, in I think it was like 1 or 2 theaters in New York, they let people in for free if they were wearing a black cape.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so how fucking Wakanda Forever is that? I had a thought that I forgot about. Where did the black cape come from? Because he was like dressed all normal, and then he's walking out with his swag after he killed people and throws on a cape.
He finds it. After he kills the gay couple, he was walking around in that room and he
Yeah.
found a cape.
There just happens to be a cape there.
He saw the cape and he's like, I like this.
This is swag. Alrighty, so that was Blacula. Next week's movie is Antebellum. Neither of us have seen that movie before. I'm hyped for it. It looks really freaking good. And normally we don't tell you ahead of time, but I'm gonna tell you. The last movie of this month is going to be Get Out for obvious reasons. We've both seen that movie, but I will watch that movie a million times more. Looking forward to a refresher, and I think we should have a little competition to find out fun facts so that it can be a very full last episode of Black History Month. So you can follow the podcast on Twitter at GITM Podcast. You can follow me on Twitter at WitchXPudding.
And you can follow me at Gabuto.
Okay, bye.